everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Lex Talk Design. This week we are joined by Kyle Hughes-Odgers. Kyle is an Australian artist who is based in Perth in Western Australia. He's a painter and an illustrator, and he is also an author. His works range from small format to public space murals, and Kyle's art explores the intersection between people, nature and place, and it's all carved out with these bold geometric forms and through stylised figurative imagery. His first exhibition really predates 2009, but going back to 2009, when records have started to be made of Kyle's solo exhibitions. Since then, Kyle's work has toured the world and featured in exhibitions throughout Australia and then internationally in New York, Los Angeles, Netherlands, Spain, Singapore, Berlin and beyond. He's also a prolific mural artist, and he has over 50 public commissions to date for his work. Hello, Kyle. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, quite the introduction.
I know, big shoes to fill, and they're your own shoes.
Yeah, it's true. It's always weird hearing your own stats back at you, but yeah, it's nice
Yeah.
to give it some foundation, I guess, of my journey so far. Yeah.
When you look back at your work and your career over the past few decades, is it nice to take a bit of a reflection? Because I know certainly in our game, projects done, archived, shredded, mentally move on next. Do you get to stand still and take a look backwards?
Uh, I guess so a little bit, but maybe it's just how I'm wired. I'm sort of excited about what I'm doing next. I don't feel like I'm in my sentimental time period yet, but the what's interesting about doing large scale artwork or even exhibition artwork is that you end up with this physical object. So there are those things they're like timestamps in a way. So sometimes, but usually I'm more excited about what's next and ideas that I want to pursue. There's plenty of time for reflecting in the future. So.
About 3 years ago, Chris Eiler and I were over in Japan, and we accidentally stumbled upon a touring exhibition in Tokyo of Christo. It showed all the technical side of it, so all of his drawings that had pieces of some of the canvas that he's used to wrap different projects. Yeah, it was so amazing. I mean, it was totally Tokyo style. You know, you turn a corner and then bang, there's Yayoi and, Louis Vuitton installations, and then you turn the next corner and there's Christo and all his magnificence. And his work, I feel like there's through lines between his work and your work because you are
Mhm.
working on outdoors, grand scale. I'm presuming you can't do it without teamwork. Can you tell me about that? And then, I know you've got the commission piece with the outdoor piece, the 7 kilometres long, moving
Yeah,
colour. Could you dare tell me about that? Clue me in on the logistics.
sure. So often that's a question people ask is how do you paint so big? And the simple answer is that there's actually a lot of, well, it's like anything with design as well. There's a lot of pre-planning. So I don't just go to a giant building and go for it. The logistics behind it are like anything. So there's lots of safety things in place. There's lots of approvals before you get to a point of actually painting the work. But it's when the application actually, after the written concept and visual concepts and everything have been approved, it's a lot. It's just such a practical thing to do. So it's literally, I just sketch up with like a brush or a roller on the end of a huge roller pole. So I might be in a machine or on the ground, but it's just a brush on a stick, essentially. And there's a lot of freedom when it's a painted treatment versus, obviously, if it's sculptural or architectural, then there's a lot of fabrication and things involved. There's not so much, or there's no room for error. That has to be precise. But when it's painted, you can basically go for it and then just adjust it as you're going. So yeah, it's the same as if someone has ever worked on a canvas. There's like a sketch line first, and then you slowly build the layers up. And then for a lot of bigger ones, have I'll sometimes get teams involved, and then for the train line project, that was a collaboration with another artist, Chris Nixon. So we designed and painted that together, but then we had a team of about 4 painters that were working with us on the actual install over, I think it was 5 months was the install. But behind the scenes of a project like that, we designed that for a year for a day a week before install. So yeah, a lot of prep. And then if you simplify and you're just doing a single, say 2-story mural, I would just paint that solo. It's all just bigger brushes and rollers and things. So yeah. So a bit of a mix, a lot of planning, but very pragmatic application. So yeah.
How do you keep the tenacity for a project like working a day a week for a year? Because, everybody puts on their resume, I'm a team worker. Teamwork is the most underrated, hardest thing to do. So how do you
Yeah.
keep that tenacity when you have to work in these big teams?
I think that project was really interesting working with Chris because we have a very similar color sense. So it was really exciting solving the design problems and the creative problems. It was also, I keep getting my stats wrong because the project was so vast, but it was about 120 piers and 8 abutments, which are end walls underneath 6 train stations. So it was just a great creative problem solving exercise. And we were so locked in on our approach together that it just flowed really well. So yeah, I think we were excited to do it. We both have individual practices too, so it was kind of a nice headspace change, knowing every one day a week we'd be locking in on this thing, and then when install came, that was just our life for yeah, on the construction site, installing for months. So yeah,
Yeah, of course, stronger together. That's good.
yeah,
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 because that commitment to each other, you don't want to let someone else down. And if you're both in, you're both in, like locked in. That's lovely.
yeah. And even installing, it was great. If someone was feeling exhausted, you kind of naturally just some you're just problem solving together at the same time, and it keeps it moving. So there were so many variables, obviously, that pop up on a rail corridor, but just having that momentum together was really good. And we had a great project manager we were working with as well, Jamie, who was also behind the scenes. All the logistical stuff would keep us moving, and basically be like, when we're in exhausted delirium, he'd be like, Wednesday, you need to be here. The machines are coming. It's all ready for you. So something of that scale would be very difficult to do it solo. So yeah, I think that also keeps the momentum. It's interesting because you're working with other people and seeing how other people operate. So yeah,
Many years ago, I studied visual art, and part of that was painting. And my
hmm,
painting teacher told me that I'm just drawing with the brush.
that sounds
It's like,
nice.
thank you, sir. Yeah, he didn't mean it as a compliment. He did not care for my kind of creativity. But because I always, because painting, like drawing is just an absolute delight. But painting, I never mix up enough paint, and I can never work out how to paint properly. And then you're doing, and so there's that. And then artists typically, paint alone in their studio and they present the finished work. When you're doing mural art, you're painting, like, how do you mix up enough paint and you're watching people, like, people are watching your work unfold? Like, I
Yeah,
know of us do two different things, but how do you do it?
I think the logistics with I paint well for the train line project. Dulux liked us because we were buying thousands of liters of paint. But yeah, it's just a logistical problem, and I guess you get to a point where it used to really bother me when I was younger when a mural was half finished or something because people start taking photos of it. But it's just kind of understanding that that's how someone might be experiencing the work. It's just not complete yet, but it's not actually finished. So there's no real reason to feel any criticism of that. So yeah, I think I've just done it so much that you just know that when it's finished, it will be finished, and it will stay finished a lot longer than it was in process. And in actual fact, those images that people are taking of a painting half finished are quite interesting because you don't often see process. So, um, but yeah, I don't think it's a fair comment from your lecturer or your art teacher. I think those days are gone of art being as perceived like it has to be one thing. So, I mean, I work on projects with architects and landscape designers and interior designers, and I also paint in the studio, and I do large line work paintings that are, I guess, essentially drawings, and I do other paintings that have no. I just don't think. I think that attitude's kind of hopefully has disappeared. It's just so broad now, and you have to wear so many hats. And I don't know why you wouldn't want to try lots of things either creatively. So I'd like to see your drawing paintings.
Oh, God, that's the kindest thing ever. And I so agree with you. I must admit, I studied photography, I studied visual arts, and I attempted to get into RMIT interior design, and I got knocked back, got a B letter, and which is funny irony now. And the amount of damage all of those art teachers that I had and lecturers that I had is like I should have been in fashion years ago, but I was so terrified. RMIT used to be, this behemoth, I mean, I'm sure it still is, but like it was just the coolest of the coolest. 30 people got in, 10 of them were
Yeah.
going to drop out. Like, yeah, it was brutal. That's why I think I have such awe and reverence. And I should also just quickly retrofit and add in how I know Kyle is I met Kyle I would say about 14 years ago in Sydney, and Chris and I had just moved to Sydney, and you must have, yeah, you were in an exhibition here, I think over at Newtown or somewhere, and I met you, and Chris and you yourself had worked together back in the day. And I mean, apart from the fact you're absolutely delightful, I was, I was like, he's an artist. And Chris is like, yeah, he's an artist. And I was like, wow, that's, and especially someone of your age, I was like, wow, that's an ultra rare. Like it takes sheer guts. And now fast forward 14 years later, you've stuck with it and you've had at it. I take my hat off. In any culture around the world, being an artist isn't an easy deal. To make it in Australia is like, it's the stuff of urban legend.
That's a very kind thing to say. But I also think there's a perception people have that you're meant to be that like an artist is just drinking red wine and throwing paint at the canvas. And my reality is, I mean, that sounds great too, but my reality is it's just discipline. It's just a creative practice. So I go to the studio every day. It's the same as if I was running a design studio, I guess. It's just the balance of canvas work and then public works as well. So, and I feel very fortunate because of my industrial design background when I'm working on sculptural, or maybe it's like a perforated screen or some kind of standalone sculpture with architects, just having that language and that background is very helpful. But it's a balancing for me as well. It's balancing those interesting projects where you are working like on a site specific response versus my own outcomes in the studio where there's no brief and I'm just expressing an idea that I want. So yeah, I think that's the key for me has just been I just don't show up at 2 o'clock. I just turn up at 8 in the morning. just get to it. So I think people don't realize how much happens behind the scenes with any creative career. Like you said, when you're seeing all the canvas scraps and everything, there's so much that's there. It's like that iceberg meme where there's so much under the water and you only see what's on top of the surface. So I think I'm rambling, but my point is that it's just consistency, and I think a lot of artists aren't consistent. So
Yeah, but Chris, you and Chris obviously share that ethic because Chris is the same. Like rain, hail, or shine, we are at our desks. Like it is bums in seats 5 days a week. The end.
yeah, I
Mm.
feel really grateful that I get to solve creative problems. So I enjoy being in that space, and then the luxury of having obviously if when it's your own practice too, you can balance that time. If there is a key day or time that you need to carve out, you have that luxury too, which is I think is invaluable. And the other thing is I'm invested in the work that I'm doing because it's something I'm passionate about. So I think that's a huge thing for maybe keeping that momentum going, wanting to do it rather than feeling like you're forced to do it or something. So yeah.
Do you think, because when we talk about, 50 public commissions that you've had, over 17 solo exhibitions around the world, just the prolific power, like you hit send on the project, like you finish it and you move on. Do you think that's made you more creatively fit?
Definitely. And there's also, I think it's just how my brain's wired. If I am working on multiple things at once, but it's still like a manageable amount. So that I'm very conscious of that too, of time management. I don't want to take on so many things that I do things 80% and then I lose the momentum and then I just don't want to finish it. So I think a part of it's that balance of just actually finishing something and then going to the next thing and being quite strict about that in terms of if I'm agreeing to a public project or if I'm agreeing to an exhibition, just knowing that even though it's the parameters of an exhibition are just my own. If I commit to making 10 paintings, I'm going to make the 10 paintings because again, I just see so many people that are so talented and then they just don't finish that final outcome. And I don't know if it's from my design background as well, where I just treat it as like it's just a project and I've got all these ideas I want to express. So what's the most efficient way of doing that but doing it in a way that it's exactly how I want it to look without compromising. So, but yeah, I guess I haven't heard of creative fitness before, but I like that. I never feel like I have writer's block because I always have a sketchbook and I'm always writing things down. I'm making little notes of things I see or a song lyric or something. And it might be 2 years later and a brief comes through your desk and you just flick through and there just might be a correlation that works. And if it doesn't, there's still so much um, mind mapping happening constantly anyway, just subconsciously, even if it's one drawing a day, like a very simple bad drawing. I never feel that feeling of like, what's the solution here? There's just so much reference points, and your brain's always thinking about things too. So, I mean, I imagine you guys feel that same way with material choices and textures and colors and things. Like you just have because it's your life, you just have this knowledge, that subconscious knowledge of where things are headed and where they're moving 6, 12 months before they've actually moved that way. So, yeah, it's just about being locked in rather than waiting for an opportunity and then thinking, how do I do it? So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up like with the work and what it calls in. Because so for me, and I know this sounds nuts, but things will just tell me what they want. Like I can walk into a room and if
Mm-hmm.
something's not right, I will just in my head, I'll just be like, what, like if it's not coming, if it doesn't come immediately, I'll be like, what do you want? Like when I put my
Yeah.
wedding dress on for the first time, she said to me, I want a Priscilla Presley veil and I want hot pink heels. And I was like, done. Well, it's going to work out beautifully. And it just, she calls it in. And so, sometimes you can just feel like there's not
Yeah.
enough light or whatever it is. And that's what, like, how does your inspiration come in?
Yeah. I think I definitely feel that same process, but I think that only exists because you're constantly in that headspace of thinking about things. So that often, like, just say it's a public project, often the parameters kind of define, like, okay, here's all the roadblocks. How can I make something really interesting here that's got conceptual depth, but it's also aesthetically pleasing. So for me, that's a big part of it. Is I want it to look good, but also if you're looking into it in more depth, it's actually interesting. It's not just purely aesthetic. And often those design problems help shape whatever that is. It just naturally goes, well, here's the three solutions for these constraints. It's a little bit more difficult, I think, with exhibitions because there's no constraints. So sometimes I put time limits on myself with canvases just to have that same pressure of being like, you've got 3 days to do this, like solve the problem, because otherwise it'll just sit there forever because you can solve it and then resolve it and solve it and solve it. Yeah, I guess it's just doing that a lot, and then you can get a read of what's happening. And then things work off each other as well. So you might respond to one problem and feel resolved, and then that can spark the solution for the next part of the painting or the public work. So, yeah.
Yeah, you have I mean, I'm in the cheap seats watching, but it feels like you have a really healthy relationship with creativity. Like I squeeze the soap too hard. I'm perfectionistic. I never want to hit send. I will work it to death,
Yeah.
get 99% done and just never. And whereas you remind me of Chris, Chris has that like put a line under it that's let's go, like time is of the essence, something is better than nothing. And I can feel you have that air, like you allow space around, as well as being disciplined. It feels like you've got a really healthy relationship with what you create.
Yeah, I think this sounds a bit weird, but earlier on, like 20 years ago, I used to do a lot of street art. And I had a friend, and I would constantly fix things. Say you're painting in an abandoned space or something, and you're constantly fixing as you're going, and then you never finish it. And then I had a friend who basically said, just paint what you're painting, and then at the end, you're going to see what's not working, and then you can resolve it then. And then I think that principle works. Like, I definitely don't want to output things that I am not happy with, and they need to be exactly how I want them to be. But if I keep moving, something that I thought would have 20 problems might actually only have 3 problems because I'm not fixating on it in the moment. And when you step back and look at the overall, you can immediately see, particularly with painting, oh, that's a problem. And sometimes, I know it's a cliche that everyone says, and it's not always true, but sometimes the thing that you thought was the mistake actually ends up being the most interesting thing about the painting. Not always, but sometimes. So yeah, there's something about that momentum of like definitely resolving things, but just move to a point where you're not just so fixated that you don't move at all. So yeah,
Kyle, you have just changed my life. That because I just focus on that wrinkle and then I redo that
yeah,
wrinkle 50,000 times, which means it affects the rest of the project, whatever it is I'm working on. Like if it's client stuff, it's easier. We have deadlines. But if we're working on internal stuff and or like our own projects and things, yeah. But yeah, I never let it get to the end. So then I can just actually take a step back and literally symbolically, you are a large format mural painter. Like you literally have to step back and look at yours. Like you are walking
yeah.
the talk.
So that actually specifically to painting is really important because often paintings look quite strange up close on if they're 4 stories high. So it's about knowing I'm just going to do this for 8 hours and get down and then be like, ooh, I got to sort that. I need a solution for that. Or wow, that's not how I thought it was working up close. So yeah, I think it's just finding that balance. And then when I'm doing integrated works with like solid materials, that's I'm probably a bit more. Yeah, obviously you have to be more constrained because once you send something to get fabricated, it's becomes quite costly if it's wrong. So, but still in the design process, there's still that looseness, and then you step back and look at it and go, okay, need to fix those panels or fix this bit, or yeah. And working with good people, so I don't know how to fabricate things, so I trust the people that I'm working with to give me good advice, and then it's about finding those people as well. So that you build up relationships where you get to, for me anyway, where I can go in for certain people and just have the loosest idea and be like, this is what I'm thinking, and they understand what my expectations of finish are and things like that. Versus if you don't have that relationship, then those drawings need to be a lot more technical and hand holding because it's a new relationship. So
I think that's the underestimated or undervalued part of fabricators, artisans, crafters, creators that like I have a much bigger rant about this, but I've always felt like in the art world, the crafting and the design section is kind of looked down upon. You
yeah,
know, you don't often see quilts in the National Gallery. They do have that design set in Victoria, that design at the tippy top. It's got
yeah,
those pair of shoes in there. There's the Tournay cradles in there. But yeah, I just feel like sometimes the art world kind of looks down on the people that use their hands to create the things. And it's the
yeah,
most underrated part of it. Because when you find someone, like we recently had to deal with an upholsterer and he was so knowledgeable and he was just to the minutiae of the perforation of the leather to the size of the drill hole. And it was
yeah.
magical.
There's also there's different gradients of creatives too. There's talkers and makers, and I definitely prefer. I like making things with my hands. Uh, and I like problem solving too. So I feel fortunate having that mix of my practice of studio exhibition work and then public work where I get to just work with other people and see how their creative brains work to solve my particular problems. Yeah,
Because what you're saying about constraints and when you're working on those bigger projects outdoors, I totally understand in the sense that like the more boundaries that come to us in a brief, like the more challenges, the easier the design is really because we have hard
hmm,
things that are hard finishes, hard no's, hard yeses. So then it just becomes like a jigsaw puzzle and you've got to get the pieces together and it's super fun. But I
yeah,
think yeah, and I can feel like there's definitely overlap with the outdoor works, constraints on whether what you're painting on materials and things. Is it because then you've got to go when you're at private works, you go and you shut your studio door and you've got the dreaded, the blank canvas.
yeah. It's not dreaded. It's
There's
exciting.
that is. And is that like because you're pushing, you've got like a yin to the yang. You're like 1 minute you're dealing with,
Yeah, I crave that
4 to 10.
time. But yeah, I think it's interesting with public works because for me, the main thing is I want to look at things that, especially with murals, there's a lot of murals that are formulaic as well. And not being too negative, but even in themes, there's a lot of repetitive themes that happen. And uh, I made a conscious decision that because I've worked as a commercial illustrator in the past as well, which was great. I enjoyed that, but I would just draw whatever the brief was. So polar bears on holiday or whatever. Just great things for yardages and like geometric print designs and things like that, which I really, really enjoyed. But it gave me this like confidence in understanding that because that's a commercial outcome and I'm just being given a very specific thing, there's less room for me to like show my individual idea in that because the client just wants what they want. And that's okay. You can still have an amazing high level response to that. But I can't force my ideas into something that's super specific and it's written in 6 bullet points and they just want what they want. But from going through that, it made me realize with my personal work, if it's not an idea or something that I want to pursue, then I just don't want to do it. And I'm quite staunch on that just because there is this formulaic thing that's happening. And I want to make sure that if I look at a painting I did, that I'm really proud of it in 10 years' time. And I don't feel like I just slotted into this like glorified advertising in a way. It's like I want that to express, it can express an idea that's, say, flora and fauna is a really common theme that happens in murals. So for me, I just want to make sure I'm doing that in an interesting way that's true to me rather than responding in a way that I know there's a formula there that would work, but I just want to make sure it's my personal work. And if it's not what the client wants, then that's fine. I'll just do that or I'll go and do commercial work. So having that stance has been really good because it's actually given me a lot of confidence in my personal work because I can just do commercial responses. But if you're actually approaching me for an artwork, then I'll give you an artwork. So yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. And your artwork lives in our house because when Chris turned 40, I bought one of your prints and I asked, could we have the 40th of the run because it's Chris's 40th and you generously made that happen,
Yeah.
which was awesome. So I'll take a photo and send it to you of where it sits. And this piece, it's almost contentious in our house because I think, and not that it matters, but I think, so I think it's a man holding a baby and Chris is like, it's clearly a woman. And the reason I think it's a man is I think now I see it like maybe that is her hair, but it looks like to me, he's wearing a beanie. And the reason I feel like it's a man is because of the broadness and the strength. Like the man is, and so Isla was only like, I think 2 when we got it. So she was, still in that baby phase. And so to me, mothering was much more of a very semicircle experience, whereas men kind of felt more right angled. Yeah, and it still brings contention in the most beautiful way to our house.
That's also something I love about art is a lot of my paintings are narrative based and story driven, whether it's a complicated narrative or a very simple idea. Let's just say in that case of like nurturing or something like that. But my favorite thing about other artwork is if I look at it and I can interpret something from my own life, or you have a conversation like you guys are having over years, I feel like that's more successful and interesting than if I just look at it and I understand it immediately, then I'm a little bit bored. So I try to make artwork that's open. It's grounded in an idea from my sketchbooks, but I don't like telling people unless they really pushed me because I just think it's more interesting. If it's connecting with people, then there's something that's happening there that's bigger than what my grounding for it was. Kind of like music, I guess. A musician would have a place from where the song's coming, but most of your favorite songs are connecting to a very specific moment in your life. So yeah, which obviously that writer had no intention of understanding that you would go through that thing. So yeah.
And now I think about that piece that I'm talking about. It must have been 8 years ago when you had your first baby. I assume that baby had entered your household.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's so Isla must have been 4. Yeah, and I can feel that now because you can feel the reverence of the person holding it, whatever, I can feel the reverence that the baby has arrived and this is a moment to be framed. It's a momentous. And that's what it reminds me of Chris and Isla because Chris was much the same. He was like, because when you are pregnant, you've got 10 months to get used to this little stranger that's about, your life's already been changed pretty graphically. For those 10 months, we get like a slow lead in, whereas you guys like kapow, and here she is.
Yeah, and there's also that like funny idea that a lot of men are just suddenly like the baby's real once it's born, which is obviously ridiculous. But just that when you're dealing with the sounds and the reality check, it's it is a lot at once. So for both parties, but it is an interesting experience. But yeah, at that time, obviously that was what was happening in my life. So try and just make things that are relevant to what I'm interested in at the time. So, yeah.
You've created works in Australia and you've created works overseas. Are there any broad differences or similarities you see between the two art cultures?
Yeah, I think with the international work, I've only done murals, so there's obviously language barriers, but it's still something that I can resolve once I'm there on the ground. So all the design process is fairly similar, where you're sending scale pictures back and forth and written concepts and things like that. But there's a element of there's logistical problems like machines and all the safety, setting everything up, and obviously different countries that you're in have different levels of intensity. Fortunately, I don't know if it's fortunately, but Australia is very, we just have such high safety expectations that often when I've gone to other places, the level of what's assumed is just like, it's way more common sense based rather than like we need to have all these documents and all these things. And because it's painting, I know I'm not being flippant with it, but even if it's a six-story building, it's I'm still solving that problem directly with my hands. So often, as long as it's set up and I know we've got a machine and paint and things like that, it's pretty much for me to go for. And then the things that happen in the moment are just usually one-on-one conversations. So a lot easier than say fabricating and getting things installed on a new building. Uh, and the other great thing with the international projects is often I'll tie them in with an exhibition or something. So I might get a commission to do a public work, and then there'll be a side gallery or something like that that happens at the same time. So I feel like maybe the gallery stuff's actually logistically harder than the public work when traveling. So um, just
No.
yeah, it's just because you're sorting all the materials and things like that. So I mean, painting murals is it's pretty. There's not actually that many. You just need a machine and paint and the artist. So unless it's like the train line where it's months and months and months, most projects I would work on by myself and maybe one assistant. So internationally, it hasn't felt too overwhelming or anything. It's just normal emails and yeah, basic problem solving. So yeah,
Yeah. Because with works, like especially, if Perth works or, you've lived in Melbourne, Melbourne works, you understand more culturally and politically like what's going on in an area before your work goes in. Whereas
sure.
with overseas, you wouldn't have that learned knowledge, like lived in experience. Is that ever risky or does it ever backfire?
So that's interesting. I don't actually, it's funny, I don't see in my work that it particularly looks like I'm an Australian artist. I am an
Mm.
Australian artist, but I don't feel like I have this Australiana or all these deep references that people would understand here. So usually my ideas are quite broad and the narratives are about this bigger idea of people and connection. So that translates internationally because the ideas are kind of universal human experiences versus like very specific political or cultural references. So, and color is really important to me as well. So, I've found that if I can use colors that I'll research certain things depending on where I am, but making a painting feel like it's integrated into a space as well, like it's always been there, is really important to me. So it's literally even say Iceland or Spain or just seeing the architecture that's around and maybe picking up on something that celebrates that rather than it just being like completely pushing against it. So yeah, I don't feel like that's been a struggle because my themes are very broad. So, but yeah, it's very important to me. I want it to feel like it should have always been there, not like it's a bad tattoo and it's not ego on the wall. It has to feel like what's the purpose of this thing. So, and without sounding dramatic, like for me, art is kind of it's like a window in a wall. You can have a pre-slab concrete wall; it's completely functional. But if you put a window in there, that you're just letting in so much more humanity. So to me, art is that window. Um, that does sound very, very dramatic, but uh, if I go in with that approach, then I'm trying to contribute. I'm not trying to like just say I was here and leave. So yeah, I want the community to take ownership of it. So yeah,
The integration, because the reason I asked about the politics is I'm thinking in Collingwood down in Melbourne, there are two murals and both very different impacts and effects. One, of course, is the Keith Haring,
hmm
more revered than God piece, and everyone's living in fear that a developer's
yeah,
going to accidentally knock it over. Um, and which, I grew up seeing before I even knew who Keith Haring was. And I grew up in Melbourne. Melbourne it used to be really arty kind of culture. Maybe it still is, I'm not sure. But when I grew up, it was like the Moomba Art Fair. Everything was about art down south. And so there was that. And then fast forward to, I don't know how many years ago, but also in Collingwood, there's the Block of Housing Commission. There's a massive mural on the outside. And mate, I suppose that's an oxy. Of course, it's a massive mural. It's a mural, but it's three faces. And I think in the most benevolent way, it's meant to represent the people of the area. But all it does to me is just racially stereotype what is, that kind of mainstream media narrative of a certain kind of person lives in housing commission. And it does it's just, I'm sure it's very well meaning. And that's where I feel like that politics game, or when you were talking before about common themes in murals that you've
Yeah.
managed to avoid, thank goodness.
I'm not familiar with that work, but I guess it's just not what my work is. So, and the ideas are often around growth and positivity and this, but not. I'm trying to do it in a way that's not cheesy. So, understanding that resilience is a core human trait and
Yes,
reflecting that in a
universal. These are
positive.
universal themes.
Yeah, so I mean that hasn't been a strategic approach. It's just what I've naturally been interested in. But that's been fortunate for me because when I paint internationally or even in different areas in Australia, I'm hoping that my response is something that people from any background can connect with, and yeah, not be told what to think. It's just interpret it and take ownership of it because I don't have to live with the 5-story mural in my house. So you do. There should be some level of connection, and hopefully that response is yeah, you're wanting it to be broad enough that people can connect with it, but they're also not like it's not so prescriptive that it's just becomes like something that they disagree or don't agree with. So I mean, or do agree with. Yeah, just keeping it open, but not so open that it's like meaningless. Yeah.
And then going back to what you're saying about, a concrete slab wall and, putting a window in is like bringing the art through and connection through. I totally agree. And I've noticed certainly in Australian public architecture, namely train stations, you could do, that TV show where they do, is it IKEA? Is it a porn star name or is it IKEA furniture? You could do, is this a
I
train
haven't
station?
seen
Is
that.
it a jail? Because Australian public architecture feels like it's become really devoid of ornateness or contemporary. I think it's pretending to be modernism because it's without detail, but I think it's really just contemporary architecture, and it's inviting. I think, like when you see lime, I think this is connected. I'm kind of rambling, but when, like you see lime, like I don't know if Perth's got lime bikes, but we've got them in Sydney and they just are laid
I
on
think
the
we did, and they
ground.
took them away for a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, they're really, and because we live right near the city, and so they're everywhere, and people just literally throw them on the ground, like I'm done with
Yeah.
this. It's like a 3-year-old done, and they're so hardy, and they're not delicate at all. And then if I go back to like train stations, and you think of like Parisian train stations, and they're so frilly and ornate with
Mm.
those glass orbs with that really archetypal like French font, and something that you want to take care of. I think your art on the landscape inspires that as well.
Yeah, that's nice to hear. I think there's a balance there. Yeah, I think it can't be 100% decorative, but at the same time, it can't be 100% functional either because then it's becomes jail-like, you know. So it's finding that balance and then trying to connect with people too. So I think most people are very creative. Lots of people have probably said this to you in the past anyway, but you know, every kid likes drawing until they're teenagers pretty much, and then they either feel like they're humiliated or it just gets drummed out of them because it's not serious. My brother had this amazing concept he told me yesterday. He said it's so funny how once you go through high school and then into adult life, creativity is, if you're not in a successful creative industry, it's kind of like, oh, when are you going to get serious and what's your real task you're going to be doing? But when everyone finishes all their work life, the things they go home to is music, television, art, good design. So all their downtime is spent enjoying creative outcomes. But there's this funny energy of this perception of like, oh, you know, you need to get serious. And I don't really know why I brought that up. I just love that concept of like, on a broader sense, there's so much weight there that's positive, and everyone can't wait to get to their downtime to enjoy these things. there's this perception of like just build the wall with no window, but in reality, the window's the thing that everyone's striving for. So maybe that's where train stations need to be a bit more ornate and decorative, and have a bit more atmosphere to bring back that energy. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's one of those, it's that paradox, like both, the opposite is true. Because I agree as well, like when you're going to get serious but if you have a job that because there's two kinds of jobs or two kinds of businesses, I think. One is creating and one is distribution. And
Hmm.
with creating, it means you have to problem solve. And it's very sustainable. Like when you problem solve, you want to do it again tomorrow because it felt good
Yeah.
today. And yeah, that's exactly it. You get home and you want to create and making stuff with your hands, like, especially at the moment with this very tech focused. I mean, talking about tech, about how great tech is with tech. Have you heard about tech?
Yeah.
Make a lot of money. We're doing a lot of tech right now. It's all very techy. And and that's cool, but it's very cerebral. And I think the fastest way to get very miserable is to get stuck in your brain and, you know, not create with your hands.
Yeah, and I also think it doesn't have the same resonance. It's like your retention of scrolling for an hour. I'll ask my kids what they watched on YouTube for half an hour, and they'll name one thing. And you're like, whereas if they watch a movie, you say what happened in the movie, and they'll give you some context of the plot. But I think, yeah, that there's something about creativity that's obviously a bit more tangible. Whatever it is that I'm doing with my paintings, I'm just trying to connect with that part that's inside everyone. I feel like we're creative creatures, and it's important to celebrate that and nurture it, and hopefully inspire, someone coming up for whatever their creative journey is. So yeah, or just giving someone a little rest on the eyeballs, look at some nice colours.
Every time, I'm so glad you brought that up because I know this sounds weird, but especially your big scale works like the silo works and things, I just want to lay on them. Like the colors are
That's cool.
it reminds me of, like Swiss cheese or a fresh crepe, the smooth
Yeah,
side. Like I just
yeah,
want to lay on it. I just want to be like, I want to lay on it, or I want it to lay, like it just the smooth, it feels so good to look
you
at.
like laying on crepes?
I would if I could get a pan big enough,
That's hilarious.
if
I
no
know what
one's
you mean.
watching.
Just the perfect flatness of the finish. But I just obsess with color. Maybe it's from that crossover of a design background too. I just think about color a lot. I have a lot of books of color theory, and I experiment a lot too. I quite like doing strange combinations that don't make sense with the rules of the color wheel, but it you can find these like tiny percentages of color that just are super satisfying to look at. And I also think you can trick people into looking at quite weird pictures if the colors are nice. It's like an entry point of like I don't understand what's going on, but the colors have like brought me in, and then you might investigate more and try and work out what's going on. So yeah,
Yeah, I
um,
will come for the color and then I'll stay for the work. If the color is right, if it's unctuous, I just, there's that scene in Amelie where, I don't know if you've seen that. It's an old French
yeah.
film, and she dips her hands in the lentils. She likes to go to the
Oh
market
yeah,
and dip
I
her
do remember
hands
that.
in the dry lentils. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's if the color is good, that's how I feel. And
yeah,
well, thankfully for the artwork, but with security and stuff, you can't touch the artwork.
yeah.
But you just want to touch it so much. Um, and speaking of color combos, is there any color combos or anything at the moment that's banging your gong that we need to know about?
It's not specific. It's more about ratios for me. So at the moment, I quite like you could have like 90% tonal whatever color, and you just have these like tiny little 5-10% little zing, like something that like burns your brain out a little bit, but it's such a tiny proportion on the finished thing. And actually, I think it applies for architecture and design as well. Is just these pops, but they're not so intense that it's obnoxious, but they're so purposeful. They become very interesting because it's everything else is like grounded, and it's like, why is there this like zinger there? And balancing those is quite interesting. I think it's kind of. I haven't seen your wedding dress or your outfit, but it's like the pop of your shoes sounds like it's exactly what's happening there, where you have this one like this hero moment that's like setting everything off. Even though the dress is typically the hero, it's just yeah, it creates this interesting visual. So yeah, I don't know. I
Yeah,
haven't seen the
she's
outfit.
oh, she's beautiful. She's a Colette Dinigan, and she's a tunic dress. So she's short sleeve. She's just a tunic. She's like a caftan tunic dress. She mid thigh, like a mini skirt, kind of very 60s cream silk. Yeah, beautiful ivory silk, and then embroidered in an Arabic pattern with all gold sequins and beads. So very 1960s thing. So of course you needed the Priscilla Presley, the bunched up tulle veil, and then the hot pink shoes. They're actually fluoro pink patent leather with clear plastic. So like a
Oh, nice.
2.0 version of a 1960 shoe. And yeah, she was so happy. And she could have gone south, like,
Yeah,
the wrong shoe, and everyone would have been so unhappy. No veil, it wouldn't have worked
yeah,
at all. And yeah, when you listen and you do what you're told, and sometimes it's hard. It takes bravery as well. Not everyone's
it
going to
does.
wear a
Yeah,
short dress for a wedding dress and stuff. And it's the same thing with the color as well. Like when you start getting into, like when you're talking about tonal on the pop, my first thought was like maybe he's exploring like brown with fluoro coral because that's a vibe. And I was wondering
yeah.
about what you thought about floral, like fluoros, but you don't want to overtake the work. And I'm like, what combo has he got? What is he cooking under
Yeah,
there? What
so
don't I know
I
about?
think for me that pop would be like a real hot zing. So it is a fluoro, but it's kind of irrelevant to me with what it is. It's if it's got the percentage, then it should, in theory, be fine. So, but yeah, I'm a big fan of like hot corals and kind of on the tonal side at the moment, working with a lot of like dirty greens and tealy greens, but really like a lot of grey in there. Like it's quite subtle, and then it just makes the zing bit. Burn your brain in a good way.
The best way, the pop is everything because it's like when you eat too much sugar or chocolate and the back of your throat cloys. That's how I
Yeah,
feel like if you don't have that pop of color or air that can get in,
yeah.
it makes my eyes water, like it's just too much.
Or it just sits too flat as well.
Yeah, and it's swampy and it's heavy and there's no push off. There's no power. It's like another thing I think people do in design as well is they get very mid, especially commercial, really mid range. So there's no piquancy, there's no sparkle or chrome or mirror.
Yeah.
It's tough.
So that sparkle and chrome is actually the same as that's the highlight as well. That's what I mean by the percentages. It's just like a textural hero or something that's brave and it's a choice and a very deliberate choice because otherwise it just looks completely flat. And because I paint flat, if switching it back to actually painting
Mm.
colors, I don't have light and shade in the traditional sense because I'm not rendering anything. So I use color as a way of moving your eye by having the light as the pops and how I want you to travel through the image. And I believe that would be the same with interior design or even an individual furniture piece. If you've got this beautiful brass feature and everything else is timber or something, I don't know. It's just having that something on there that is a choice that makes it feel special rather than being like, you kind of need a like or hate it moment, but you can make it a like it moment because of the percentage of what you're using. Yeah.
Yeah, the ratio, it's literally the Vegemite to the toast.
And too much Vegemite is no good.
And not enough, it's just toast. I mean, toast is good, don't get me wrong.
That, that is an analogy for high-end design.
Like the good Vegemite toast
Yeah,
is.
yeah. Good bread, perfect butter, perfect Vegemite ratio. That's the zing. Whatever that is, and that's what I'm talking about. So it's not actually specific. For me, it's not about textures or color. It's just, in theory, you could be given like really horrible options, but if you can balance them right, you're still going to get some interesting aesthetic out of it. And then if you can control those options and choose really nice things, then that just elevates everything anyway. So
Yeah, and I think therein lies the rub of the problem solver. Because I constantly think about in my spare time, every 4 years, I think about the Australian Olympic uniform issue.
yeah,
And green and gold is that's a
that's a
bugger
shocker.
of a colour to wear. Oh, and I don't, they do get in Australian designers and everyone gives it their best go, but I just feel like no one's nailed it yet. Like no one's
I think it's
balanced
because they
it.
always go 50-50. They need to split the ratio a bit. But yeah, green and gold is like it's a tough one.
It's a vibe. I know, and I think we've got navy. I mean, beige gets involved, but no, there's just no. It's just all retro, no vomit. Like it's just got. Yeah, it's a really tough remit.
That's a good t-shirt for the Australian Olympic team. Origin, no vomit. I think about that every Olympics too. I'm always like, this is a tough brief. Like maybe this because they're both so saturated usually as well.
It's super tough. And I feel like maybe they should, because if something's, if really not working, then you lean into it really not working and push it the other way. Maybe we're trying to be too highfalutin and we should just, I mean, God knows we've seen the dry as a bone and Moleskines trotted out, but maybe we need to go harder, like, parachute material, one like a onesie exercisey, those 1980s, like a onesie suit
Yeah,
with like a diagonal, lean into the diagonal, like triangulated
I think
diagonal.
I think they need to lean into like the 80s and then imagine that yellow, but it's like a fluoro pop on that like 80s vibe. Would be quite cool. Modern 80s. You kind of see it a little bit in basketball, like NBA designs now, where they've got this mix of it's not 100% retro, but it's like retro inspired, but it's modern, and it's usually quite successful because it's grounded in this like nostalgia, but it's done in a modern way.
Through relations, one of our via marriage is an artist. I think her name's Mary Tonkin, and she's an Australian landscape painter.
Hmm.
And we recently saw her exhibition, and it's exquisite large format works. And I'm no landscape devotee by any stretch, and this stuff, like I got served. I was like, fuck, I didn't know what I didn't know. Like it's so immersive.
Yeah,
It's
that's cool.
really beautiful. Oh, and she paints like, the Dandenongs, like those beautiful, they're not rainforests, but I don't know what you call them, but like the ferns and the fernery and the uprooted
Really
trees, and you can
atmospheric.
just,
Yeah,
oh, so sublime. And then because she's in the undergrowth, and so the view, you're not looking down on Mother Nature, you're in it looking out. It's looking down on you. Big scale, beautiful stuff. But my sister-in-law was saying she bought one of her works and had to buy it through Mary's agent. Mary doesn't sell direct, not even to family. Conversely, I noticed with your work, you're direct. Is
yeah.
that a strategic? How does that work?
It's just I noticed I showed with an amazing gallery in Perth for 10 years called Turner Galleries. So it's basically my like first 2010 was a huge year for me. It's basically I got this really large commission from Murdoch University, and then I also joined up with Turner Galleries. So it was this big kind of like trajectory year of like not going from just painting, doing street art and doing random like group shows where you put a painting in a bar or something to being in a like formal recognized space and having this big commission. And they were great. I had four solos with them. They just retired, so the gallery closed. But in Perth, I'd gotten to a point, I guess, with my profile that people were just contacting me directly. So I just started that format of dealing with people directly, which has been great. I really enjoy that process. The only negative of it is there is something to developing a body of work and presenting it in a gallery as like here's the show versus individual paintings. But yeah, it's just the power of the internet thing, I guess, and being getting a profile to a point where people are kind of seeking you out a little bit rather than having to like have shows so people understand what your work is. So, but I'm not opposed to having exhibitions. I showed in Melbourne. The last three shows was a gallery called Backwards Gallery in Collingwood. But yeah, I think it's a great way of also introducing you, like you going to that exhibition and seeing them in real life. There's a different weight to that, and I think that's important. It's great for people to be introduced to your work that might not be familiar with it. There's no real like I don't feel strict by any parameters. It's just what I'm at the moment. I'm doing that in Perth, but I'm would happily have an exhibition as well. It's more a timing thing where my plate is quite full with all the current things that I need to do, so I'm not like seeking it out at the moment. Yeah, maybe the thing I would actually like to do is pivot to more immersive based exhibitions. So people are coming and having an overall experience rather than being like, here's my four static paintings. I mean, my 10 static paintings. You're coming in and seeing mural scale works and sculptures you can walk around. And yeah, I feel like people like immersive interactive experiences a lot. And I paint large scale. So that would be an interesting direction to pursue. It's just a time thing, really. So yeah.
Yeah, did you see, or did I don't know if it went to Perth, but the Loon show, where they use those huge screens. We saw it with I think it was David Attenborough's collection of Mother Nature. It runs for like an hour and
Oh,
you
yeah, I did see that. Yeah.
Loom,
Uh,
Loom, Loom.
yeah, I
Beautiful.
couldn't remember the
That
name
would
either,
like that's
but
what I'm thinking. Yeah.
yeah. So I think that's something I'd like to explore a little bit more. Is just going down that path of like you're going there to be in the show rather than being. I've got to work a project I'm doing at this art gallery of WA at the moment, and I painted a huge black and white line work drawing, so a painted drawing on the wall, and then the public are coming in and drawing a one-to-one scale of that artwork that then gets stuck over the top, and that's been a really interesting process because it's great just seeing people want to be in the conversation as much as going to look at works individually. But yeah, there's a real draw there of like opening up that creative energy and being like uh, a bit more we the people about it. So yeah.
And can I ask you, it's a broad term, so go as lightly or as detailed as you feel like. What does art mean to you?
So I guess art for me is just a very human thing. So art is really in the modern world. I think it's such a broad idea, and I think it crosses most creative pursuits. So it's design, architecture, painting, illustration, sculpture, any literally any format. I think is what art is, and it's just a human response to existence, I guess. So yeah, and I think it's an important thing that we need to foster. And it seems to just seeing my kids and how that is so natural for all the whole group to be naturally interested. And I'm curious as to why it fades out. So the older people get, yeah, I don't know if it's a system thing or if it's just uh, naturally happens that way. So.
Isn't it joyous to watch creating through your kids with their savoir, like their laissez-faire savoir faire?
Yeah, it's just that like not questioning. I think it's really interesting to watch just like idea, 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 idea. My daughter, who's only 6, she's making a visual diary while we're in Melbourne. And we didn't even bring it up as a concept. So everywhere we're going, she's making these little drawings and writing things. And even that, it's just like she's not second guessing. Some of the objects don't make any sense. It's just she saw some advertising and then some food we ate. And then, but you look at it at the end of the day and you're like, oh, yeah, that is what the day was. Yeah, it's really inspiring seeing that energy because it's pure, I guess. So,
So before we wrap up, is there anything, do you have any projects? You mentioned that you've got upcoming projects. Are there any exhibitions or book launches or anything we should be looking out for?
so I've currently got this installation at the Art Gallery of WA that's on. That's probably the most, well, it's definitely the most recent one. Um, so that's kind of open ended. I think it's running till June, but the end date keeps moving, which is a good thing. And then, yeah, apart from that, I'm actually having quite a bit of studio time. I've got a lot of canvases and things I'm wanting to work on. So last year it was pretty much completely consumed by painting 7 kilometers of a rail corridor. So this year it's been nice to have some time to get back in the studio. Yeah.
What a good balance. You've really hit like a magic equation there and not by accident. I'm so impressed.
Yeah, the balance is important. I think studio is very isolating, and then public work is not, and that it feels very healthy. Not become a full hermit, and also uh, people tell you the truth in public too. So it's nice to go and be in the studio sometimes.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Kyle. That has just been resplendent, so much insight, and you've changed my life as well. Just get it done first, get the first draft done, then you can have a look. So, I mean, if
Yeah,
nothing else, thank you so much. That is life changing. But absolute best of luck. And again, from all the way on the East Coast, we're championing you and cheering you on because your work's incredible.
thank you. Yeah, it was great to chat.